Okay, morning level ones. Today's dish is the first dish that I'm going to demonstrate from our final exam. Okay, and it's actually the main course dish, so it's probably the last dish that you would eat if you're eating them in order, but it also takes the longest to prepare. So that's what we'll do first in the exam. We will cook this dish, and then whilst this dish is cooking, we'll cook the other dishes. Okay, if you know what I mean, if you understand that. I'm just going to talk you briefly through the ingredients, which I did put a little snap of at the beginning of the video. But what I've got in these pots is half a carrot, which I've cut into macedoine. I shouldn't need to explain what that cut is by now, but large dice. Okay, I've got a piece of swede, which is again cut into macedoine. I've got half an onion, which I've diced really finely. I've got some of these lovely silver skin onions, which are beautiful. They're not pickled, by the way. I know you see them pickled onions looking like that, but these aren't pickled. Don't use pickled onions, they'll give it a really sharp taste. I've got a clove of garlic, which I've crushed. I've got a dessert spoon of tomato puree, one of these pots of red cooking wine, and then I've got 3 individual pots of diced lamb for our stew, and then I've got about 250 mils of beef stock and some sprigs of rosemary and thyme as well for flavour. Okay, so part of the preparation is going to be for you to trim the meat, and some of this meat needs a lot of trimming, some doesn't, but you might notice that some pieces have got lots and lots of fat on, some pieces haven't, and the ones that have got lots and lots of fat on, like this one, will need some of that fat taken off. This piece here that's got hardly any fat on at all won't need any trimming. Okay, so that's ready. There's also some pieces that are much larger than the others as well. So you're going to have to sort through those pieces of meat to make sure that they're all exactly the same. The reason being for that is we want them to cook at exactly the same length of time. Okay, so I'll demonstrate on one piece of meat here that I've got that's particularly quite large, and I'm just going to show you how to trim that up so that it's the correct size and it's got the correct amount of fat on it. Okay, so I'm just going to cut it into smaller pieces, and that very large piece of fat there, we're not going to use that. That's going to go into our waste container. Okay, the rest of the meat I'm going to trim up so that it's all in even sizes. Okay, so once we've trimmed all our meat, as you can see, it's all been trimmed up, all even sizes. We've got to put it into seasoned flour. So in here I've just got some plain flour, and I'm going to put in a good amount of salt and a really good amount of pepper as well. The reason for the flour is to help us thicken up the stew while it's cooking. Okay, so the meat goes into the flour, and then we make sure we toss it round well in the flour, and then we want to shake off as much excess flour as we possibly can. So on the stove here I've got a pan ready to cook the meat in, and I need to seal off the meat, so I want the fat and the pan to be really quite hot. You can see the smoke coming off there, and as soon as the meat goes in, it starts to sizzle, and we're looking to get a really nice brown colour on all the meat. Okay, so making sure we're careful when we put the meat in so it doesn't splash us. And I've got some extra fat or oil ready here just in case I need to put any in, because the meat will soak up the fat and it might become quite dry to start off with. Okay, you can see the meat starting to colour, but I need it to be much more brown than that. So we turn the heat up, Okay, so as you can see, I've got a really good colour on the meat now. There's a really nice browning gone on, which I'm quite pleased about, and I'm happy that I can put the next ingredients in. Okay, so the next ingredients that go in there are our root vegetables. We've got our carrots in there and our swede, and again I'm just going to stir that round and just get a little bit of colour onto the vegetables. I'm not going to cook them right through because the stewing process is long. It's going to be in the oven for about an hour and a half, so obviously those carrots and swede are going to cook whilst it's in the oven. So we've got a little bit of colour on those carrots and swede now. Next thing I'm going to put in there is our garlic, which we've crushed obviously. Let's give it a really good stir around, but we don't want to colour it because it'll become bitter. In with our onion as well, and also our silver skin onions, and we're just coating the mixture together so that it's all mixed in really well. Next thing that's going to go in there is our red wine, and ready for the steam. Okay. And that starts to reduce straight away. And what we want to do is to reduce it down so that there's virtually nothing left at all. So you can see there's virtually no liquid left now. I've reduced it down. So the next thing is the addition of the tomato puree, but off the heat completely. So I'm going to take it away from there. This isn't switched on, so there's no heat. If I do put heat on at this point, it's going to burn my tomato puree and then the whole mixture will be ruined. So being really careful, I'm just going to stir in the tomato puree so that everything has got a really nice coating. Right, so the last couple of things that are going to go in there is our herbs, which I've just peeled away from the stalk, and that's just some rosemary and some thyme. Give them a really good mix in, just like everything else. And then we've got our stock, which is a beef stock. I'm just going to mix all that in and stir it really well. And it will start to thicken straight away virtually, but we do need to make sure that we've got enough stock in there so that all the meat is virtually submerged. Okay, so you can see that I can't see much of the meat sticking out, just one or two little bits, but they're okay. Most of it's submerged under the stock. Then I'm going to cover the mixture, okay, because it's going to go in the oven. So to protect the meat, I'm going to cover it, and I've got just a square of foil, and then I'm going to wrap it really tightly around the pan, being really careful because the pan's obviously quite hot. Make sure it's really tight fitting, and then that's going to go into our oven, which is preset at 150 degrees, and it's going to go in for about an hour and a half. We're going to check it halfway through though, to check that it's still got stock in there, it's not gone dry, and that we've got the right flavours.